In the opening scene, a blonde pretty lady, Angie, is on a call. As she hangs up and continues walking down the corridor, Kyle joins her and is on a call too, seemingly upset about the auditions, hence, he needs new faces. He complains to Angie about the situation, but she doesn't think the scripts that came were total turn-offs. Kyle needs Seth to fly in props, but he gives an excuse that he has dance class in an hour, so he won't be able to do the task. Angie offers to help and Kyle is glad she did. She gives him a cup of his favorite coffee. Kyle is impressed because that is what he likes, and he playfully talks about Angie giving him another chance in her love life. They seem to have dated before. Angie, fully aware of what Kyle meant, tries to act oblivious, but Kyle just scoffs and frankly states that he would like for them to try a relationship, because she gets him. Angie genuinely tells Kyle that she's fine with him not wanting to be serious, but he tries to prove her wrong, claiming that he's changed, and hasn't been out with a woman in months because he has her. Angie just looks at Kyle and blinks in confusion as Kyle explains how their love could be. He walks out and Angie talks herself back to the present. She goes down to help Seth with his task. In the next scene, Angie is now at home, sitting down on a couch and going through her phone. She sees all the unread messages from Kyle. While doing that, her best friend, Beth, who she lives with, comes in. Beth wants to know why Angie came back late, so she lets her know that she had to step in as prop coordinator. Beth seems impressed and commends her effort. Angie thought it'd be easier for her to work on her script while she's at the production set, but that doesn't seem to be the case, since she's too busy now. Angie goes back to her phone and is disappointed to discover that the apartment she was on the wait list for just got rented out. Beth reminds her about the popular saying about the city that it's impossible to have a boyfriend, a job, and a place to live at the same time. Angie congratulates Beth for achieving all three. She reminds her that her boyfriend is a part-time boyfriend, but she's still happy with him. Their discussion about boyfriends makes Beth remember that her boyfriend just flew in, and will be spending some days at their apartment. To Beth's relief, Angie lets her know that she doesn't mind. It's the next morning and Angie is busy with her script, but doesn't seem to be making progress. When she stands up to get coffee, Beth and her boyfriend, Aaron, walk in. Angie is confused as to why Aaron is wearing her bathrobe. Beth apologizes and tells her that she had to give it to Aaron because she forgot to wash the towels. Not wanting him to feel bad, Angie points out that the bathrobe looks cute on him, but he isn't interested in their discussion. Angie's phone dings and Beth thinks it's Sunday duty calling, but Angie discovers it's a male, showing that she won the rental lottery. She screams, super excited that she won. She will finally be getting her place after her first disappointment in getting an apartment. Beth is genuinely excited for her friend. They even stand up, squealing and jumping in excitement. Now at the condo, which happens to be the one Angie just won, Ted, a resident in the building, is on his way out. He has a little discussion with Louie, another resident, about the hockey playoffs last night. Still in the apartment, Angie is walking in, but she loses her balance and the things in her hand fall to the ground. Ted helps her pick them up while she apologizes and claims not to be busting in but moving in. As Angie looks up, she's stunned by Ted's looks and hesitates a bit before completing her statement. Ted just smiles. He offers to help her carry some of her things to the elevator, but she declines the offer and thanks him for the help. Angie collects her stuff from Ted. He welcomes her to the building and they go their separate ways. Upon entering her apartment, she smiles in satisfaction. She feels happy and fulfilled to have finally gotten a place she can call her own. While placing a flower pot on the balcony, a bird flies into her house, but she does not see what it is. Angie is startled and tries to find what flapped its way into her house. To her utmost surprise, it's a parrot on her kitchen slab. Soon, there's a knock on her door, and it's Janine, the building manager. She introduces herself to Angie and congratulates her on winning the lottery. She hands Angie a hard copy of everything she needs to know about the building, including the newly implemented no pet policy, excluding fish. Upon the newly implemented policy, Angie gets nervous because of the parrot that just flew into her house. She chuckles to hide her nervousness. Just as Janine concludes her talk and is about to head out, the parrot squawks. Angie fakes a squawky cough to draw Janine's attention to her, hoping she won't look for what made the sound. She lies about something being stuck in her throat. Angie then hurriedly thanks Janine for coming and walks her to the door. Later, Angie calls Beth to tell her about the parrot in her house. Beth suggests she calls the zoo, but Angie had already done that, yielding no positive response. Now, she is in a dilemma. Angie can't keep the parrot because of the rules, and she doesn't want to lose this apartment she just got. Beth suggests giving it away to a pet store and Angie gladly heads off to one. When she gets there, the man asks her what kind of parrot she has, so she describes it to him. He starts talking about what kind of species it is, which bores her. She's disappointed when the man tells her that pet shops don't take rescues. Since it looks like she'll be keeping the parrot, she decides to do a little shopping for it. While looking at an item, she's interrupted by a voice who asks if she's shopping for a pet. She drops something and looks up to see Ted. She replies, stating it's for her new roommate, who just got a pet. Angie asks what Ted is looking for in a pet store. Showing her the container of food, he says he's shopping for fish food. She warns Ted that he would want to be very careful and strictly adhere to all the rules of the building so as not to lose his place. They end up getting properly acquainted. Angie is back at the building. Scared of being caught, she uses her bags to try to hide the pet items she bought. Louis looks at her curiously, wanting to know what exactly she was hiding. She enters the elevator, but before it closes, Ted joins her. While in the elevator, they talk a little and get to know what kind of pets they both have. When they get out of the elevator, they discover how they are opposite door neighbors. Before they could get into their respective units, they hear the sound of the parrot. Ted looks at Angie, perplexed, but she immediately finds something to say, stating that it's her old roommate dropping off something, and the parrot sound is over the phone. Ted doesn't look convinced. At night, Beth is over at Angie's house. Angie explains to her that the parrot almost got her into trouble with Ted. Instead of emphasizing the experience with the parrot, she mentions how easy he is on the eye. It's obvious Angie is physically attracted to him. Beth asks for more details, but Angie has little to say. Beth stands up to go and check out this new hot neighbor while Angie follows behind, interested, reading a book and smiling to himself. Beth is impressed with what she sees and agrees that he's cute. Ted raises his head, so Angie and Beth run back to their seats before he could catch them spying on him. Beth is happy for Angie because she already has a job and a house, and right next to her is a potential man who can make her have the three almost impossible things to win in the city. Unfortunately, Angie disappoints her friend when she tells her she's thinking of giving Kyle another chance. From the way Beth reacts, it's clear that Kyle didn't do well the last time. Angie tries to convince Beth that her ex is no longer a player. Beth supports her friend to do whatever she wants, although deep down, she wants her to be with Ted rather than Kyle. But she doesn't even know if she has a chance with him. Also, Angie feels like it's better to just remain neighbors with him because she wouldn't want anybody to find out about her pet in the house. Beth prefers Angie giving Ted a chance and forgetting about Kyle. She advises her to get a bottle of drink for Ted, and maybe from there, something happens. In the next scene, Angie goes over to Ted's place with a bottle of tropical drink. When they meet, she presents the bottle of the drink. While still at the door, they hear the sound of something falling, coming from inside Ted's house. Ted explains he was hanging a picture, and that's probably what fell. Angie tries to shoot her shot and requests for both of them to have a drink together, but Ted seems to be more interested in whatever was going on inside his house. He thanks her but cuts her off. Then, he quickly heads back inside after accepting the bottle. We find out that Ted also has a pet, which is a full-grown dog named Zoe. Ted scolds the dog for trying to blow their cover. Turns out that what fell was actually a vase. It's a new day and Angie's parrot wakes her up with its squawky voice. The parrot calls the name Martha, who Angie thinks is the real owner's name. She opens the parrot's cage and calls its attention outside, thinking it'd fly out and probably go back to where it came from, but to no avail. Seconds later, Kyle calls her, wanting to know where she is, stating that some clients need her urgently. She assures him that she'll soon be at the office. Angie and Ted come out at the same time. Ted apologizes for last night and Angie asks about the supposed picture that fell. For a split second, Ted doesn't seem to understand what she's talking about, making it obvious that he lied. While in the elevator, Angie adjusts her hair and Ted notices bird droppings on her shoulder. He calls her attention to it. After a while, Janine joins them in the elevator. Angie quickly covers the bird dropping with her hair. Janine asks Ted about his thermostat because she heard from maintenance that it's having issues. Ted says it's fine, not wanting his secret revealed, but she insists on coming the next day to check on it. She also reminds them both about the condo meeting before they part ways. It's already late and Angie is still at work. She's speaking to a vet clinic about her parrot that isn't able to fly. Kyle comes in and interrupts the call. She then explains to him how a parrot flew into her house. Kyle is glad she found a new place and promises to visit, something she's not opposed to. She then shows Kyle pictures of some candidates for their project, but Kyle doesn't like any of them. Still, Angie promises to keep searching for what he wants. The next scene shows to condo meeting. Janine is addressing the tenants on the issue of door decorations, which she tackles by asking for a vote. Angie, as a new tenant, doesn't know which side to support, but since she sees most people agreeing to door decorations, she votes for it too. Janine, oblivious of the parrot and dog in the building, commends the tenants for abiding by the no-pet policy. Ted suggests that there should be a size restriction to the rule, but Janine claims that her father, who owns the building, has instructed her to maintain the property. She doesn't want to disobey her father. On that note, they conclude their meeting. Janine goes over to Angie to ask how she's settling in. As they chat, Janine brings up the issue of no pets again, and Angie tries to play dumb, stating that she doesn't even have time for pets. Ted overhears the conversation and starts to worry that Angie might snitch on him if she finds out he's hiding Zoe in his unit. Beth and Angie meet up the next day. Beth asks about the new place, the new neighbor, particularly if they've started anything romantic yet. Angie tells her about the little things she discovered about Ted, and this thrills Beth. However, Angie is more interested in being on good terms with Janine, just to avoid any problems in the apartment. Angie goes back home and is welcomed by a surprising scene. A dog runs out of Ted's house with Ted pursuing it. She stands there stunned. Just as she tries to recover from the shock, Janine comes in. Angie notices Janine's presence and screams, giving Ted time to do something before Janine discovers it. Janine heads to Ted's door after saying hello to Angie, but she blocks her, claiming that Ted is not home. Janine wants to get the master key to help Ted feed his fish. Angie, in a bid to cover up for Ted, tells Janine that Ted already asked her to feed his fish while he's at work. Janine believes her and leaves, after mentioning she'll stop by later. When she's finally gone, Ted comes out with Zoe. Angie assures Ted that she won't snitch on him. He appreciates her for helping him out. When Angie opens her door, her parrot walks out, squawking. The two of them stand with their pets and look at each other in shock. After the funny moment, Ted and Angie are having a drink together while he explains how he got the dog. It's his sister's dog, but he has been with it for a while, because his sister got a promotion overseas and can't take the dog with her. Angie also tells Ted of how the parrot flew into her house on her first day in the apartment, and how she thinks something is wrong with it because it can only fly from its cage to the couch. They talk for a while, and later, they look at the sunset together. Angie talks about being in advertising but dreams of becoming an adventure script writer for movies. However, she hasn't had the time. Ted then offers to help Angie with the adventure part. Later that night, Angie is writing her script but can't seem to concentrate. She goes over to her parrot and starts talking to it. From the sounds the parrot makes, she finds out that its name is Gil. This whole parrot incident is compelling her to write a story about a girl and her bird. In the next scene, Angie is heading to work. Ted catches up with her and invites her to bring her bird to Zoe's vet. She appreciates him booking a vet appointment for Gil. Instead of following the normal elevator route, they go through the stairs with their pets, to avoid being seen by anyone. Later, the vet discovers that Gil has a fractured wing. The vet offers to let Gil stay at the clinic till the wing heals, which makes Angie feel reassured. Back at work, Kyle brings good news about work. Angie tries to offer a high five, but instead, Kyle uses the opportunity to hold her hand in a romantic way. The ringing of her phone interrupts him. It's Dr. Moore calling about Gil not wanting to eat and showing signs of depression. She tells Angie that it'll be better for her to take Gil back so that his health will improve. Gil is back at home and Angie is talking to the bird. Angie tells Gil to say Ted, which is a sign that Angie has feelings for him. She even sings a song to Gil while thinking about Ted. Moments later, Ted knocks. He needs her help to look after Zoe because Janine will be coming to his house later. Angie agrees and takes the dog. Still outside with Ted, Kyle arrives, so Angie introduces the two of them. Now inside the house, Kyle looks at the parrot, saying that if it were him, he'll leave it at a shelter. While Kyle and Angie talk, Zoe takes Kyle's coat into her mouth and barks when Kyle takes it back. At the same time, Gil squawks, making him comment how the house is like a zoo. He doesn't seem like a fan of the situation. While the duo hangs out on the balcony, Angie sees Janine and Ted, and becomes a little distracted. She seems jealous seeing Ted and Janine laughing together, so she and Kyle go back inside. Kyle notices that Angie is distracted and asks her what the problem is, but she claims to be thinking about her script. He thinks she shouldn't bother about script writing because she's already good at what she's doing now, but she points out that writing is what keeps her inspired. When Kyle leaves, Angie goes back to her script. Ted arrives and takes Zoe back home. He also apologizes for any inconveniences Zoe must have caused her. While they're talking, Gil says two words, Ruthie and bingo. Ted thinks that whoever owns Gil may be a bingo player. He also suggests they go to a bingo game that his family friend owns, and try their luck with finding the owner there. It's a new day and Angie is talking to Beth about Ted and Janine. Beth thinks Angie is already back with Kyle, but she lets her know she isn't. They see Ted approaching them and quickly wrap up their chit-chat. Angie then introduces her friend to Ted. Beth assures them that their secret is safe with her before she leaves, and then they head to the bingo game. At the bingo game, Ted and Angie exchange pleasantries with Martin, the owner, revealing the purpose of their visit. After that, they both start asking around if anyone perchance may know any Ruth that owns a parrot, but they are out of luck. After their fruitless search, they decide to play a game before leaving, and Angie wins a bingo, winning a big teddy bear as the prize. After the game, they take a walk around the area. Ted playfully takes a sip of Angie's drink. This antic prompts Angie to call him by his full name and he, in turn, replies with her full name too. Angie is surprised at how he knew that was her full name, but he says he just took a lucky guess. When she compliments the spot they're at, he reveals that it's Zoe's favorite spot for playing catch. They talk about his work and she finds out he didn't pass the test to get his pilot's license. She encourages him by describing some relatable instances. Back at the apartment complex, they meet Louis in the lobby and have a little conversation with him. Ted claims to want to go and get fish food. Angie gets the message and plays along with him. Angie takes Zoe back to Ted's house, but doesn't notice that Janine saw her come out of his house. After a few minutes, Janine knocks on Angie's door just to ask if everything is okay because she saw her leave Ted's apartment. Angie claims she was feeding his fish and that everything is fine. Gil once again almost blows Angie's cover by making noise, but Angie tells Janine it's her brother. At work the next day, Angie asks Kyle if he read the script she sent, but he hadn't. While they are on set, Kyle gets upset because the person he chose for the pilot role is very awful at it. Angie comes up with something and immediately calls Ted to ask for his help in the role. He arrives even though it's an impromptu call. When Ted walks in, Angie is lost in admiration. She hands over the script to him and he goes right to action and performs wonderfully well, to the excitement of everyone. But it's obvious that Kyle is jealous. Angie gets back to work and overhears Seth talking about a dance called Cha-Cha. She recalls Gil saying a word like that and concludes the parrot's owner would definitely be a dancer. Back at the apartment, Ted meets Angie in the lobby. She is excited to tell Ted about what she discovered. However, no nearby dance studio is teaching Cha-Cha. Ted suggests they sit together and talk about it while they eat, since he has extra takeouts. He admires the way Angie is trying to find Gil's owner even with all the work she has on her hands. She points out that she's a pro at multitasking. They talk about her script and Ted says he'll like to read it, even if it doesn't have an ending yet. Someone finally replies to Angie's online advert for Gil, but she doesn't seem to want to give Gil to a stranger. She wants to find the bird's original owner. Later, Ted discovers Angie's got some hot moves and she lets him know that her mom was a dancer. Things get intense between them when Angie moves closer to Ted and they pull each other in for a kiss. Unfortunately, a ding from Angie's phone interrupts them. Despite Angie wanting to resume what they were doing, Ted knows the whole situation has become awkward, so he says he needs to get Zoe back home. He reminds her to give him her script before leaving. Back at Angie's workplace, Seth tells her Kyle had assigned a role to her, instead of him doing it. Angie meets Kyle and is excited to know if he has read her script, eager to know what he thinks. Her hopes and happiness are dashed by the reply she gets from him. It's obvious that Kyle isn't even considering Angie's dreams, only his selfish ambitions of them being together with her. He once again tells her that she should remain where she is, rather than struggle with writing. Kyle's words hit her hard. When she finally gives it to Ted, she tells him to read it with low expectations. The next day, Ted takes Angie to a plane museum and surprises her by mentioning how everything there are still capable of flight. He continues to tell her facts about each item on display and even point to his favorite one. In the middle of their conversation, Ted lets Angie know that he was really impressed with her script. Angie doesn't seem to believe him because Kyle had already made her feel like the script wasn't worth anything, but she still thanks Ted for reading the script. They arrive at the apartment with Zoe in the back seat of the car. When they get out of the car, Janine walks up to them. Angie quickly hides Zoe's toy that is in her hand. Janine sees the dog that's in the back of Ted's car and asks who the owner is. Ted immediately cooks up a story of the dog being his sister's. Angie is impressed by how fast Ted comes up with an excuse. Janine believes the story and hands over a decoy that scares away birds to Angie and offers to help her set it up. Angie quickly and humbly refuses the offer. Ted and Angie quickly and awkwardly walk away, leaving a startled Janine standing alone. When Angie reaches her unit, she starts to narrate her experience to Gil. She brings out the decoy to test if it'll scare Gil, and she notices a change in his mood. She goes back to the pet store with the decoy to inquire why it made Gil change his mood after seeing it. The man at the pet store tells her that parrots thrive when they find a partner and this owl may be making him jealous because Angie is all he has. Later that night, Angie is on her balcony and Ted comes out to his too. He calls her attention and they start talking. She tells him about Gil's issue and her plan to send him to a sanctuary. Ted compliments Angie, which makes her emotional. She finally thanks Ted for taking her out that day, then they say their goodnights before heading back to their respective units. The next morning, on her way out of the building, Angie hears Louis say "not on your Nelly," which is something Gil says often while he talks to someone. She asks Louis how he knew about the phrase, thinking it may lead her to Gil's owner. From there, she gets to know that Louis learned the phrase from his grandmother. At work, Kyle tells her that she's needed, but instead, Angie goes home to find Louis' grandma. She doesn't find it hard to locate her, as she hears a woman say the same phrase, so she quickly heads over there. Angie asks the women if any of them may be Ruth. One of them, Nancy, tells her that Ruth is deceased and she also mentions something about Gil, Ruth's parrot. From there, she tells her that she has Ruth's parrot and explains how she got it. Nancy tells Angie a story about how Ruth got a parrot, and this makes her emotional. Tears fall from her eyes. It seems like Ruth's story and Ted's motivation gave her renewed inspiration for her script. At work, she lets Kyle know that she's not going to work overtime anymore, and the only thing she wants to continue doing is writing scripts. She walks away from Kyle, feeling satisfied that she stood her ground and will now be doing what she loves. Angie is not only motivated to write her script, but also to go after Ted. She talks to Beth confidently about getting together with Ted and that even Janine can't stop her. She then texts Ted and smiles before entering the elevator. Angie is so happy about all she had achieved that day. She opens Gil's cage to give him the good news and starts to dance to the music she plays on her phone. Her attention drifts away from Gil. She doesn't notice the bird walking out of her door, heading to the elevator, and finding its way into the lobby. She heads to the lobby and finds it on the counter in front of Louis. Before she could get it out of there, Janine walks in and sees it. Angie immediately knows she's doomed and would be asked to leave the building. Even though Angie tries to explain to Janine how Gil found its way into her condo, she doesn't care and just tells Angie to start packing her things. When Janine sees Ted outside, she exaggerates the declaration of Angie's eviction, saying that she was hiding a pet that was causing havoc. Ted doesn't think Angie should take the fall alone, therefore, he comes clean about having a dog. Janine shows favoritism by telling him that he won't be evicted from the building. They don't know that Angie is overhearing this conversation, feeling disappointed that Ted didn't put the effort into defending her. She quietly enters her car and moves out. Ted goes to Angie's unit to look for her, but finds it open and empty. Feeling bad, he goes to confront Janine and points out that he and Angie committed the same offense. Meanwhile, Angie has moved back to stay with Beth. Ted texts Angie, but she doesn't see the point of replying to him, since they're no longer neighbors and she is disappointed that he didn't fight a bit harder for her. Next scene on that same night, Ted packs his things, ready to leave the condo. Back at Beth's place, Angie brings out the owl decoy Janine gave her and discovers that it wasn't the owl after all that made Gil depressed. He was protecting Zoe's toys. Angie goes back to the apartment to get her remaining things from Louis, and learns from him that Ted is also moving out because he couldn't let her take the fall alone. This makes her feel emotional and decides to go look for Ted. When she finds him, Angie apologizes to Ted for not replying to his texts, and admits that she was wrong for making assumptions. Things get romantic and emotional between them as Ted talks, and they end up kissing. Zoe tries to interrupt, but Ted throws a ball to distract him while they continue making out. Next, Ted and Angie are at the supposed plane museum with their pets. Then and there, they decide to book a flight to somewhere tropical. Back at the apartment, Kyle visits Janine, claiming to be looking for a place closer to work that doesn't allow pets. It's obvious he's not aware of Angie's eviction and talks like he wants to snitch on Angie and Ted. Janine suggests they sit and have coffee while discussing. As soon as they step out, it is like all the tenants were just waiting for her to leave. At the sound of Louis's signal, they all come out in numbers, each one with a pet. In the final scene, Angie and Ted are enjoying themselves on a plane. Ted is flying it while Angie sits behind, smiling. We hear her voice in the background, reading her finished script.